It's Wednesday, November something, and Thanksgiving Eve. And I'm getting a head start on tomorrow, digging back into my old Better Homes and Garbage Bread cookbook. Which was printed in 1963. I think I got this copy about 67. And right here is one of my favorite bread recipes of all time, an old-fashioned Swedish rye, which I haven't made for years because I can't get any decent rye flour down here. Until now. I had to import it, but now I have something to actually work with. So, this is going to happen. Now we start out by softening 1 packet of yeast in warm water. If you can stick your finger in it and keep it there, it's the right temperature. Mix it in thoroughly. Set it aside and ignore it for a few minutes. And while that's thinking, combine 1/4 cup of brown sugar, light or dark, 1/4 cup of molasses, come out of there, a tablespoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of shortening. I'm using butter because I like it. Mix these together until they form a nice globby mess. About like this. And then add in 1.5 cups of hot water. As hot as your tap can produce is probably hot enough. Seems to work. The objective now is to dissolve the molasses and the brown sugar. And you stir it until that happens, like about now. And you let it cool for a few minutes to lukewarm. And then add in 2.5 cups of rye flour. And 3 tablespoons of caraway seed. I'll make them slightly heaping because I like caraway seed in my rye bread. Yum. And stir this all together. And when it's starting to come together, go ahead and add the yeast, which is now nicely warmed up and is theoretically ready to go. Mix all of this thoroughly together. This can take a few minutes, don't rush it. Make sure you've got all the lumps out of it. And when it's a nice batter, start stirring in the all-purpose flour. It'll take somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 cups. Add this in a little at a time. The object at this point is to turn it into a soft dough. If you have a fancy KitchenAid mixer with dough hooks, you can save a lot of elbow grease. I don't, so I do it the old-fashioned way. And when it's starting to form a ball, and starting to pull away from the sides of the bowl, and cover it, and let it and your arms rest for about 10 minutes. And now it's time to get into it. Lightly flour it and your work surface. I just use the countertop. Works fine. And lightly flour your hands. And then roll this beast out onto the work surface. Come out of there. Any day now. And start kneading it. If you didn't get it quite thick enough in the bowl, it will tend to stick. Try to avoid that because it's a nuisance. If it tries to, add more flour. This is the original 4 cups of white flour. Before this is done, you will have used up most of it, if not all of it. And knead it for about 10 minutes. Several minutes into it, start reminding yourself that it really is going to be worth it, because it is. Now I've actually been going for about 12 minutes at this point. Getting it to the consistency that I want it. It should be smooth, uniform, a firm dough, which pretty much holds its shape when you let go of it. That no longer sticks to the counter or to you. And you call it done. And the next step is to drop it into a lightly greased bowl. Turn it around a little to lightly oil it. Cover it with plastic wrap so you can see through it. I hate plastic wrap. Let go. And stick it away in a warm, quiet place for an hour and a half to 2 hours until it's about double this size. Now, while I'm ignoring the bread for 2 hours, there are other things to do, one of which is to cook the giblets. 3 turkeys worth of necks and giblets. I simmered them for an hour in a combination of homemade turkey stock, a cup of that, a cup and a half of store-bought chicken stock, and a half a cup of sherry. And then I ripped them all apart. And this is now done and over with, out of the way, and ready for the turkey to come out of the oven tomorrow. It should look something like this. Let go. And you punch it down, which literally means what it says. Turn it out onto a lightly floured work surface. I suppose that's lightly floured. And divide it into 2 exactly equal parts. And cover them and let them rest for 10 minutes. And 10 minutes later, you shape them into either 2 rectangular loaves or 2 traditional round loaves, as you prefer. Put them at opposite ends with a lightly greased cookie sheet, baking sheet. Noting that one of my identical loaves is bigger than the other identical loaf. You cover them back up. And you put them back in your warm place to rise again for another 2 hours until they're roughly doubled in size again. 2 more hours pass and they look like this. And now they go into a 375-degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes. And now we're almost to the final reward. You just have to get them onto a rack. And cover them up and let them cool for about a half hour. Alrighty, now it's time for the ultimate test. Cut into this puppy. Looks like bread to me. Oh yeah. It's been way too long since the last time I had this. Yum. A little butter. This is so good it could almost be dessert. If I don't manage to eat it all in the process, I will park it and hold it until tomorrow.